imperative that every church has a budget. That budget ought to have two sides to it. One, stewards, the other, trustees. There's some items for which the stewards are responsible. There's some items for which the trustees are responsible. For example, when it comes to the pastor's salary, when it comes to your connectional, your episcopal district, your presiding elder, all of that comes under the stewards. The utilities and anything else that pertains to the grounds and all comes under the trustees. Every church ought to have a budget. When this annual conference concludes and the pastor goes to wherever they're going, first thing you need to do is get together with a budget with your stewards, your trustees, and come up with a budget. And there's an easy way to tell when the church doesn't have a budget. Several churches in annual conferences I've been to, and they say, "Bishop, we have a budget." Then they say something that lets me know they don't have a budget. This is what they'll say: "Bishop, our budget is $212,900.17. A budget does not have cents. A budget is always rounded to the closest dollar. So if you tell me your budget got some sense to it, I know you don't have no budget. All right? So every church ought to have a budget. And that helps you in the operations of the church. You know, there's some people, we make something big that ought not be big at all. You know, the utilities get turned off. And they say, well, the pastor didn't call a meeting for us to meet. Brothers and sisters, when the church approves the budget, that directs the finance committee on how it's supposed to handle the funds for that church. Why would you call a meeting to pay the electric bill? The budget been approved. Pay the electric bill. Now, you don't call a meeting and don't pay the bill. You won't be discussing the meeting in the light. All right? So you don't have to call a meeting to pay the budget. For this annual conference here, both of the districts came up with a budget for the annual conference for which they paid sustentation. So that's how the money is supposed to be dispersed. You see, now, the discipline, and there's some parts of the discipline that do need to change. One of the things the discipline says, when you read it, there's a portion there that says the official board is supposed to meet every Monday. Now, if you're still doing that, you are obsolete. Why are you going to call a meeting on Monday so they can approve paying the pastor? When the steward set the pastor's salary, you ain't got to meet every Monday for that. You pay the pastor according to the budget that's been approved. So the budget is critical. I want every church in the North Carolina Conference to have a budget that's put together by the stewards and the trustees in the church. And members of the church, and I don't like the word members, congregants in the church ought to ask, what's our budget? Ask the pastor, the steward, the trustees, How much is our budget? The budget will help you tremendously in handling the administrative affairs of that church. When you make the budget, you also discover how much you need to take in every week to meet the budget. If your budget's $52,000, that means every week you got to take in $1,000. And that way, the folk ought to be tithing. Let me say that again. The folk ought to be tithing. And so if they're tithing, you have an idea what everybody's giving. You see? And the other thing is, when I go to churches on Sunday mornings, I look at the bulletin. Again, some people say that I'm nosy. No, I'm not. I'm curious. Because some of us put stuff on the bulletin which is absolutely incorrect. And we know it's incorrect. How many people in here how many pastors in here on your Sunday morning bulletin put these words, tithes and offerings? Let me see your hands. Now I know somebody in here got tithes and offerings on that. All the churches I go to. Huh? Yeah, I like that. But a lot of them got tithes and offerings. And that, for most people, is incorrect. Most people in our churches, let me say, put it this way, on average, only 20% of our folk are tithers. Only 20%. And so if 20% of your people are tithing, and you're putting on that tithes and offerings, that's incorrect. Most of our folk have never given an offering. Let me say that again. Most of our folk have never given an offering. When you read the Bible, you saw it, you read it, it's in there. This is what it says. Bring the tithes into the storehouse. You cannot give an offering unless you first give the tithe. Now that's it. The offering is in addition to your tithe. For example, say you make $1,000 a week. $1,000 a week, your tithe is $100 a week. But you know, the Lord was really good to me this week. I not only got the tithe, I got my income check back from the Internal Revenue. So I got an extra $700 and some. So I'm going to give the Lord an offering. So you get $50 or $75 from that extra $700 you got. That's an offering. The offering is always an addition to your tithe. Now, a whole lot of us get a whole lot of money other than our salary. And that offering never make it to the church. The other day, Abe Lincoln and George Washington were talking. And Abe Lincoln was complaining because he very seldom gets to church. You see? George Washington shows up every Sunday. All right? So, you got to give your tithes and the offering. You see? And to be frank with you, when I mentioned to you the other day, the best ministry we had at St. Matthew was that No D's ministry. No debts, no deficits, no delinquencies. Best ministry we had. The giving to the church increased. People's financial story improved. The credit scores went up and all. People got out of debt. They learned how to pay their bills on time. They were not delinquent. It was a wonderful ministry. You see, and the thing of it is, a lot of us, when preaching takes place, you know, we in the Word, we clapping, we shouting and carrying on, but then when that sermon is over, and it's come time to give, that word is gone. That word fell on hard ground and got swallowed up. You see, and I hear people say this, man, if I could only get an increase, my finances would be better. And a whole lot of us got the increase. And rather than our finances getting better, they got worse. We got an increase, but we in worse. Worse financial shape. And you wonder why. It's because we really don't believe what the Bible says. Read the book. This is what it says. The Bible asks this question: will a man rob God? Answer is yes. But most of us do not understand that text. It's deliberate that the Lord uses the word rob. It's impossible to steal from God. But we rob him every week. When somebody steals something, that means you're not home. They break in your house, take your television, your jewelry, your piece of change. That's what they used to call it back in the day, a piece of change. You see? Now that's stealing. But when they rob you, they stop you on the street, pull out a gun, get your hands up. They take your stuff right in your face. So that's why the Lord asks, will a man rob God? We rob God to his face. Now listen to what the Lord says. The Lord says, if you rob me, you're cursed. You're cursed. Don't care how much you make, you're still cursed. Make more and in more debt, you're cursed. And pastors, that's why you have to use discernment. The folk you put on the finance committee. Why you have people counting money, not giving money? You said, that don't make sense. Somebody join your church, work at the bank. Next week, they on the finance committee. And giving nothing. So it's important. You need to have a budget. You need to teach to your people. Most of pastors are scared to preach about tithing and stewardship. We're afraid of what the people going to say. All the pastors after is money. Somebody the other day said AME stands for after money every time. You know what I mean? But that's where we are. That's where we are. And then you ought to have a system in place where at least twice a year, everybody in that congregation gets a copy of your financial report. Twice a year. At the midpoint of the year, if you go by the calendar year, June 30th, they ought to have a copy of the church's financial report out on the table on the lobby, or to get it from the ushers when they come in, so that everybody in that congregation knows what's happening with the finances in that church. Some people don't give because we're not transparent. They want to know what's happening. We're giving the money, but we don't see nothing for it. So, and transparency is critically important. So elders, I want you to make sure the church has a budget. And everybody at that quarterly conference ought to get a copy of the church budget. Church budget ought not be no secret. Any question on that? So I hope that will take place. Second thing is, after this conference is over, this is May, sometime between June and July, the district, presiding elder district ought to have a district meeting where the reports for everything you're asking for, every church has it. In other words, what the connectional budget is, what the second district budget is, all of those budgets. If you got 25 churches on the district, it ought to be 25 churches listed on that sheet. And everybody ought to get a copy of the sheet. It ought not be a secret what the churches on the district are paying. That's not no top secret classified document, because everybody's contribution helps make up the budget. So if you have the number one church, yes, how much you pay ought to be on there. If you pay the least, that ought to be on there, because everybody makes it whole. And let me say this, because when I was in Georgia, I kept having people come to me talking about, Bishop, the elders say you asking for this. I never knew I was asking for so much stuff. You see. And so I made up a sheet and sent it to every church. And on that sheet was what the elders ought to be asking for. And, you know, the bishop, the pastor came to us after church and said they needed $275 because you had called the meeting and everybody had to go to. I know nothing about the meeting. I know nothing about every pastor supposed to get $275, you see. And so you can ask me about it. I'll tell you whether or not I asked for it. But it's against the law for me to ask for some stuff. All right? So every presiding elder district ought to have a district planning meeting where all of that information is provided. All of that information is provided. And there ought not be a whole lot of stuff on that sheet. All right? Anything else regarding the finances in the local church? Anything else? Every church ought to have a finance committee. The finance committee is not the pastor. Every local church ought to have a finance committee, and it's in the discipline how you organize your commission on stewardship and finance. Stewards and trustees ought to meet every month. When I pastored, we had 11 meetings between the stewards and trustees every year. The month of August, we didn't meet. But at least 11 months out of the year, you ought to have a meeting. And it's a bad thing if the members ask the stewards and the trustees a question, they say, I don't know. That's a bad thing. And the first thing that people presume is the pastor not giving them the information. You know, a lot of times the folk don't come to the meeting. All right? So any other questions on finance? I hope I've cleared that up. All right? Let me move on from that. Now, my brothers and my sisters, we are living in some tough times. This country is in very, very precarious shape. And particularly difficult it is for folk who look like us. Now you hear the president's team referred to as MAGA, Make America Great Again. Reality is that means to turn back time. Turn back time to a period when you did not have the Civil Rights Law, didn't have Voting Rights Act, didn't have equal opportunity, you didn't have any of that. Now that's the environment we live in. And a lot of us don't pay attention, but everything dealing with black progress they're trying to take back. I mean every blessed thing. Now you can't teach black history, and they say that's because you're trying to intoxicate young children. In other words, they say that white children ought not feel guilty because of what their parents and ancestors did. And so my response is, oh, so black kids are supposed to be ignorant and not know about the great things their ancestors did to help us move forward. Now that's the mindset, you see. And we're in trouble because of the fact we are the only people who let everybody else teach our children. Everybody teaches black children except hardly a few black parents who teach their own children. And most of our folk don't know our history. For example, it is utterly impossible to teach American history and not include blacks in it. It's utterly impossible. Most people don't know that the first American killed in the Civil War was a black man by the name of Crispus Attucks. Most people don't know that in every single war the United States has fought, at least 25% of the troops have been blacks. And blacks only make up 12% of the nation's population. You see, they don't want you to know that up until 1860, the United States was the second poorest country in North America. Today, we're the wealthiest country in the world, but they don't want you to know why. The reason we are the wealthiest country in the world is because up until about the end of the 1800s, blacks never got paid for their labor. Picked cotton, plowed the field, did all that labor, and never got paid. That's why we are the wealthiest nation in the world. And they don't want folk to know that. And so now almost anything dealing with blacks, they take it out because they say you're trying to indoctrinate the children. And we are crazy if we sit by and let them do it. And so one of the things I'm hoping is that doing leadership congresses this summer in AME Church, some of it will be devoted to teaching black history in this country. It's very important we do that. Then they're trying to do stuff with the African American National Museum, with the Smithsonian Institution, just a lot of stuff. And so we just cannot sit back and let it happen. And so you will be hearing soon about an event we're going to try to have on July the 2nd, somewhere in Washington, trying to get faith leaders from all across the country, black and white, to address all of these matters that are going on and address them from a theological standpoint, not political, but theological. For example, they're trying to put together a budget. That budget will increase income for the wealthiest 10% and leave level income for the 90%. That's not biblical. You see, and the book says, it's in the book, I was hungry, you fed me. I was naked, you clothed me. The Bible talks about taking care of the least of these in our society. So we need to address these things from a theological position. Now, if you deal with it theologically, the orange man will not understand a word you're talking about. Not a word. That's like being an immigrant to him. And of course, I'm slow. I'm still trying to catch up because I don't understand why he's making all this furor about the immigrants being felonies, and rapists. Fact of the matter is, he's a felon and a rapist. I don't know why he's upset. You see, so it don't make no sense to me. You see, but when we do this, we're hoping to have the support of our congregants. And my brother and sisters, let me move on early and simply say, and some people get mad when I say it, but black folk, we have nobody but ourselves to blame for the situation we're in. We don't have nobody but ourselves. In the 2024 election, the blacks had the opportunity to determine who would be the president and who would have majority in the Congress. I don't apologize. The ones who blew this election were blacks. Now, granted, white women didn't use good sense when they voted, because MAGA also mean no equal rights for women, you see. But we blew this election. The orange man won the election because he won every single swing state. There were seven swing states. He won all of them. He won the state of Wisconsin by about 11-some thousand votes. In Milwaukee alone, there were 44,000 blacks who didn't vote. In Michigan, he won by about 144,000 votes. In Detroit alone, there were almost 200,000 blacks who didn't vote. In Pennsylvania, he won by over 200-some thousand votes. Philadelphia alone, there were almost 500,000 blacks who didn't vote. That's the way it happened in all of those swing states. Blacks did not vote. And so if you're going to come to me and complain about what's going on, before you do, let me ask you, did you vote? All right? And I want you to ask me while we're in church. All right? Because my thing is, if you didn't vote, don't complain. All right? Don't say nothing. You're seeing all that y'all that voted for that orange man, now you got them Hispanics on the bus. But we voted for you. He don't care about that. All you know is you got to go. If you're not white, you got to go. When you hear all this talk about the southern border, and nobody saying nothing about the northern border. And then he had the nerve to say, why can't we get some immigrants from countries like Norway? I'm going to try to arrange a whole heap of folk look just like us come over here and stand outside the White House. What's all them Negroes doing out there? See what I mean? So we ask for your help when we try to act on our best interests. Any question on that? All right, now, brothers and sisters, we're going to get ready to close this session to get ready for the closing session tonight. Now, let me say this. When we close this session, Madam Secretary, I left my discipline, as my grandmother used to say. Anybody got a discipline on them? No, my statistician might have one in his briefcase. All the students got one? Oh, bless y'all's heart. All right, well, let me say this now. I'm getting ready to close this session. I'm going to close the session. I'm going to tell you all the truth. y'all may not get a sermon tonight. Because y'all had such good preaching here today. I mean, you may not need another one. Yeah. We just ready, just give you appointments till you go on. So, but I'm getting ready to go. I'm going to go over these appointments. I'm going to talk with the Lord, see whether or not we're going to have a sermon tonight. Because I'm tired now. I've been all over the place. I'm tired. You say, I'm tired. So I might get up and say, Jesus wept, and say, the doors of the church are open. All right? So, you never know. But let me say this. But when we do close this session, if I have not seen you by now, I will not see you after I close this session. If you call me, I will not answer. If you knock on the door, I will not open. I'll be going over appointments and praying about preaching, all right? So that's where we are. Now tonight, most of you will be going back to where you are. This is my first year with the 2nd District. This first conference has been my opportunity to get to know you. Now next year, it will be a different story. Next year, I will know you, and I will know your work. Some of you tonight, and I will probably announce it, some of you tonight will get temporary appointments. Temporary means that your appointment is not final. Your appointment, if you get a temporary appointment, the chances are that you will be moved at the planning meeting. And so if you get a temporary appointment, if I don't announce it, that means you shouldn't say anything about it. If I announce it, then that means it's all right, and I want the people to know that your appointment is temporary. Let me also say this. Some of you have asked me to move you. Now let me be very clear. If you ask me to move you, and I move you, and you go back and tell the folk, I didn't want to move, but the bishop moved me. No, let me tell you, no, that happens a lot. But let me tell you where I am on this, and believe me when I tell you, if you ask me to move you, and I move you, and you go back and misrepresent the truth to the people, I'm gonna send you back. Now that's my mindset. So I want to be very clear. I want to be very clear. Again, I've gotten letters and calls from a whole bunch of people who want a pastoral change. Every church has a board of stewards. And if you feel there's a need for a change, the stewards need to write the bishop requesting a change. And pastors understand. You nominate your stewards. That's your cabinet. Now, if your cabinet says you got to go, then the chances are you got to go, all right? Now, let's just be honest. And let me say this because, I meant to say this before, one of the things I'm disappointed with, one of the worst things a church can have is an insecure pastor. When it comes to stewards and trustees, some of us are so insecure, we don't look out for what's the best interest of the church. You may have some people in your church on a scale of 1 to 100 who may be a 90. And so rather than putting somebody that's a 90 on the board, you pick somebody who might be a 60 or 65. Because the chances are they're going to go along to get along. But my position has always been, I don't need a bunch of yes people. I don't want people to tell me what I want to hear. I want people who are going to tell me what I need to hear. Now, if I'm getting ready to back up and about to go off a cliff, don't say, yeah, come on back, Rev. No. I want somebody to say, fool, you better stop. See what I mean? So you know, let's get the best people we have. You see, and you know, if you've taught them and trained them, then you ought to have confidence in them. And we need to start getting young adults in positions of leadership. You know, it's not your time yet. Well, when is their time? You see, let's train people, be in positions of leadership. So that's where we are. All right. Madam Secretary, you ready for the disciplinary questions? I love the way my grandmother said that. The discipline. Sister Holmes, come here. She think I'm picking on her. All right. Y'all know that show used to come on, I've Got a Secret? We got a secret. All right. Let me find my page here. All right. Y'all know what I thought about today? Next Thursday, having a memorial service for my wife in New Jersey, and I was thinking, when she came to meet with me, she came to see me and said that her boss, Senator Lautenberg, thought I was upset because he voted against Bill Clinton's budget. And I said to her, that ain't true. You came to see me because you like me. I said, now, she says, I don't like you. I don't even like preachers. 3 days later, had our first date. And my charm just won her over. If you got it, you got it. So y'all really not praying for me. That wasn't recorded, was it? Oh. All right, you ready? All right. Who are the preachers admitted on trial?
Melissa Johnson, Christopher Williams.
Who remain on trial?
No one.
Who are admitted or readmitted to full connection?
Reverend Johnny P. Bowden, itinerant deacon.
Who have been elected and ordained deacons? You can say, see the Board of Examiners report.
See the Board of Examiners report.
Who have been elected and ordained elders?
Reverend Serena Redditt Lawton, Reverend Jacqueline Mitchell, Reverend Marjorie Edwards, Reverend Bessie Hayward.
All right, who have been located this year?
No one.
Who have been elected by the General Conference to exercise the Episcopal office and to superintend the African Methodist Episcopal Church? The active bishops.
The active bishops.
Who are the supernumerary preachers? You can say see the report.
See the report.
All right. Who are the superannuated preachers? See the report.
See the report.
Who have been expelled from the connection by this conference?
No one, Bishop.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Who have withdrawn this year from this conference and the connection?
No one, Bishop.
What members of the conference have died this year? See memorial report.
See memorial report.
Have all the preachers subscribed to the church periodicals?
All have subscribed.
What preachers are indebted to any other departments of the church?
There have been no reports given to the secretary.
Does each station, circuit, or mission in this annual conference have a lay organization? The president said yes.
Yes.
All right. Does each station, circuit, or mission in this annual conference have a women's missionary society? The answer is no, and if the missionaries can get me a list of those churches which don't have a missionary society. All right, when shall this annual conference next meet?
In the hands of the bishop.
Where shall your next annual conference be held? Yes.
Bishop, into this 156th North Carolina Annual Conference, yes, if my alternate delegate can come and stand with me.
All right.
St. Luke will, and those, is St. Luke in the house? Anybody else? All right, if you will please stand. St. Luke will gladly host, along with the Southern District Conference, the next annual conference at the when and where will be at your discretion.
All right. We have been invited to come to, is it Fayetteville?
Yes.
Fayetteville for the 157th session of the North Carolina Annual Conference. What is the pleasure of the conference? Is there a second? All in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All right, next year we'll be going to Fayetteville. Fayetteville, here we come. All right. Where are the preachers stationed this year?
In the hands of the bishop.
All right, now, my brothers and sisters, the bishop cannot hand out appointments until this question is asked and answered. Will all of the ministers in the North Carolina Conference please stand? Is there anyone who knows anything against the life and character of any of the ministers of the North Carolina Conference? Please come forward and state what your claim is. Seeing no one and hearing no one, I declare that the character of the ministers of the North Carolina Conference is passed. You ought to give yourself a hand. All right. Yes. Yes, okay, presiding elder done?
Bishop, before the close of this 156th session of the North Carolina Annual Conference, the conference presiding elder Nixon and myself and the conference would like to take this time to thank God for your leadership. We thank God for this session of the annual conference. We are truly grateful for the move of the Spirit. We're truly grateful for your wisdom, your teaching, and the way you have conducted this conference. We can truly say we thank God. We have been blessed, Bishop, and we look forward to the next 3 years of God taking us higher and deeper and we truly becoming the church at its best. To God be the glory. Thank you so very much, sir. Give him a hand, conference.
Thank you so much, elders. Thank you so much. All right, Dr. Holmes.
And Bishop, into this conference, I make a motion that this 156th session of the North Carolina Annual Conference will close, sine die.
All right. All right, properly moved and second at this 156th session of the annual conference following the reading of the appointments will close sine die. All in favor will say aye. Aye. Ayes have it. Motion is carried. I will see you tonight at 7 o'clock. All the ministers of the conference ought to be in their black robes. We will come in the following order: the itinerant elders, itinerant deacons, local elders, local deacons, licentiates, program participants, presiding elders, and the bishop. All right? All right, this session hereby stands adjourned.